Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Mbeumo, who's a professional football scout and analyst. And today we're here to cover what we've learned about Manchester United in Ruben Amorim's first pre-season. Okay, so welcome back to the channel. For those who don't know, obviously Manchester United have now completed their Summer Series US tour, and we're here to cover...
Fame trophy.
Yeah, the biggest trophy in the season. So we're here to cover... I called it last night, the good, the bad and the ugly of Manchester United's pre-season. And we are going to cover and we're going to try our best to signpost each phase that they've been, working on, tweaking on, some stuff that's gone really well, some stuff that hasn't gone really well, and so on. So, yeah, we're going to jump right into it, and I'm going to start on the out of possession stuff, and then Ume will lead on the in possession stuff, because we've both picked up sort of nice little bits and bobs from both. So, on the board here, I've actually got Manchester United's pressing shape from last season. So you can see on the board, if obviously Manchester United are the red counters, we've got a 5-2-3 against a typical 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-1-1 with the sort of two off-centred players up here at the front. And then we've got Manchester United's three narrow forwards and the two pivot players. Now, I want to speak to you about what Amorim has changed here, and to do that, I'm going to tell you how this was actually not working last season. Yeah. So, if you can imagine that the blue team are in build-up, and especially in deep build-up, we can see that obviously these players are responsible, or this number 9 is responsible for sort of curving his run and blocking off this side of the pitch. So if this player's on the ball, we want to curve that. This player is now responsible for jumping out, and then what that means is that when players drop into the pockets, like here, this player, the left centre half, is obviously meant to step out and close out this overload that the opposition team can get in the midfield. So that's what Ruben Amorim tasked Manchester United with doing, but the problem with that was the centre-backs weren't consistent enough with stepping up to the press, which it was a personnel issue, but obviously if you're pressing with just two midfielders in there and three central defenders, usually you've got a +1, so you can imagine here there's three central defenders looking after two attackers for Manchester United, and what that meant was that there was a spare man elsewhere on the pitch. We're not matching up man for man here. Now, what Amorim has changed in the pre-season, which is a really good sign for Manchester United initially, is that we have now got Manchester United pressing in a 4-4-2. And how they're managing to do that is, it was different between the games against Bournemouth and Everton in terms of the personnel. But what they're actually asking was, can we sort of lopside the five at the back. So either this was Amad Diallo, who's playing as a right wing back, or this was Patrick Dog, who's obviously playing as a left wing back. Yeah. This means that obviously the back five shuffles across. So against Everton, we had sort of a Yoro, Maguire, Shaw, Dallo back four with Amad pressed up high. But it was different against Bournemouth with Dog, who actually being the one to press up high.
But it was still Yoro actually in that right position.
Yeah. So obviously that has changed against Everton. We actually seen Bruno Fernandes take up this left wing position with Amad Diallo pressing up high, and that created the nice back four with Cunha and Mbeumo actually leading the press. And it was okay. I think it was a lot better against Bournemouth, and I think the reasons for that were the personnel was better suited in the zones that they were using to press in. So obviously, Dorgu I would consider better at sort of going in these physical end-to-end duels.
As a natural left
midfielder. In comparison to someone like Bruno Fernandes. Yeah. And vice versa. Now, the problem, obviously, with this shape is that you've still got sort of attacking midfielders defending here. Your pivot's not really amazing. We've seen Ugarte and Mbeumo against Everton. It
needs this player to come in and help as well to make it a 3. Otherwise, you've still got the 2 in there, and that's a similar-ish problem, isn't it?
Yeah. So obviously, when the ball was progressed by the blue team, we actually see Manchester United still be able to camp into this 5-3-2 shape, and it's really easy to spring between the 4-4-2 and the 5-3-2. So if you can imagine that this is just the player who's the pressing trigger, if this player jumps up here, the back four shuffles across and it makes a 4-4-2. And we can go in between sort of the 5-3-2 block to a 4-4-2 press. And that is a lot smoother than what we've seen last season, which is what we just spoke about, which was the 5-2-3 with the forwards gambling high, and sometimes in the block they would sit a bit deeper in that 5-4-1. But that's what Manchester United have changed structurally out of possession in the mid-block to high press. If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications. Okay, now moving on into Manchester United in possession and sort of the tweaks that we've seen so far this pre-season in comparison to last season, and Umir is going to lead off on this. So do you want to go into sort of the principles, the shape, some of the instructions that have maybe changed over the course of the summer?
Yeah, so like we've spoken about, and I think a lot of people have spoken about, this centre-back kind of coming into these positions, and sometimes that's awkward. At times in pre-season, that's worked to find that bounce pass into these areas, but we've seen it probably with a bit of less frequency than we have done in the past. I think generally, principle-wise and shape-wise, in terms of United's build-up, we're seeing a few things. One is these three centre-backs, particularly moving into wide positions. So there's a big distance between them. Euro in particular, for me, has been massively impressive in taking responsibility in those areas and trying to build up play. Now, if we're just illustrating this shape to begin with, you'd think that these two players are your wing-backs, essentially. Now, what Amorim's done is he changes the role of his number 10 and his wing-backs depending on who's playing where. Now, what I mean by this is, generally, if Amad Diallo is playing here or here, I think that Ruben Amorim wants him to get involved in build-up because he can carry the ball really well. He's a left-footed player, so he can find these passes inside. He can resist pressure on his back, and then he can try and turn and carry and play these sweeping passes in to another number 10 or a central midfielder or your striker running in behind. So it's not strictly position-based, it's more role-based. In the game against Bournemouth, we saw Amad Diallo play as the right 10 and Dalot as your right wing-back. Dalot, as a right-footed player, can't find this pass inside easily because he's back to goal. So he would have to use his left foot to find these players. Therefore, what Amorim did is he pushed Dalot up high and wide, and he had Amad come from here, drop into these positions, and then play into the double pivot here. Or if you had the opportunity to go long or go directly into the flank as well. So that's kind of what he did. In the game against Everton, Amad Diallo started as the right wing back. Yeah. So you didn't have to have Mbeumo make this movement. He didn't want Mbeumo doing that. Mbeumo instead kind of got involved in the central play and the in-behind play. And Amad again stayed on this side, getting involved in the build-up in that way. Yeah. So it's a principle-based or role-based kind of instruction that he's giving them, which in my opinion is good. You want to play to your player's strengths. Dogu again, high and wide on this flank as well. And then sometimes it was a Bruno Fernandes or somebody else dropping into these spaces at times. But he's not averse to using his number 10s in these wide positions deeper and then rotating them, which is a good sign, to be honest. In terms of his midfield, in the build-up, generally you're trying to find players in here. At times, these players can kind of stagger their movements, so it's not always two on the same line. One player can drop, and then if this was a Casemiro like it was against Bournemouth, he sometimes pushed up and then Bruno got involved. And I thought Bruno was really impressive in that game in the pivot. I know that's probably not his best position, but he played a lot of one-touch passes and he used his relational quality with teammates nearby to kind of get around players and then find the space afterwards. And we'll talk about how sometimes United have a tendency to go too direct at times. Yes. But in terms of the build-up, especially against Bournemouth, there was a lot of good sort of small space interchanging play in that area. I suppose the last thing I'll mention about the build-up itself is with these players here, your wide centre-backs, oftentimes they've got to have a lot of responsibility in terms of getting up and getting involved in these areas. And that kind of turns into settled attacking possession. But I think, again, I want to stress how important these two players have been in kind of contributing in general. I think that kind of encapsulates everything. The 10s also have quite a free role. We often see Cunha dropping in the build-up and Mbeumo as well, dropping into these areas and trying to get involved and having the license to get involved in build-up very deep as well, almost like some of the top players in world football do. Cole Palmer at Chelsea comes to mind, for example. So that's generally what we've seen. It's similar, but I think there's a bigger onus on giving players responsibility and also the personnel themselves being platformed in areas that suit them also for what Amorim's trying to achieve.
Yeah, perfectly illustrated. I wanted to just touch on one thing then that you mentioned just towards the end, and that was last season. One of my biggest criticisms of Amorim's United was that this was us on the ball and we didn't see much movement at all. And like we played Garnacho and Dorgu, and sometimes they create these movements, which was sort of the only really rotations that were going on the pitch. But then when I watched the Everton game, especially in the first half, I seen Bryan Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha and Bruno Fernandes especially just sort of moving everywhere.
Very deep as well.
Yeah, creating sort of these strange deep runs. And don't get me wrong, it's a lot better.
Yeah.
Having freedom positionally, we've covered both Cunha and Mbeumo's move to Manchester United. We said that we don't want them to be locked into these fixed lanes of play. We want them to move, especially Cunha, someone who's attracted to the ball, and likes to play fast.
Oh, they're so good at carrying the ball as well. So if you can get them anywhere deeper, when they can turn and face and carry, you get so much territory just through that utilisation of their quality.
The only thing that I would actually say that I was disappointed with the front three was obviously the lack of number 9. We didn't play a centre forward, so I felt like if we were speaking before about this pattern where Amad Diallo was playing these sort of sweeping balls with his left foot across, so if he's got pressure on his back, he was dropping these balls into here, and then when Mbeumo was picking it up, I was looking ahead of Mbeumo for like, where's the runner? Where's the...
And who knows even if you pass it back here, who's going to go there, isn't it?
And obviously, at the time of recording, we must say this all the time, but at the time of recording, they're linked to Sesko, and that does give me an idea that, he does do that. He does break the line. So does Højlund, but, that ship sailed, it looks like. But, really interesting to see what Manchester United have tried to do in pre-season, especially with the change of personnel. And I must give Ruben Amorim credit for not... He's been a manager who's been criticised with, system over players. It does seem like the 2 new signings that have come in, they've been given a lot more freer roles in terms of their skill set.
And it's still within his system. But it's kind of like a bit of an in-between where he's not changing his system, but he's kind of saying, look, within the system, I can kind of add a few extra sort of strings to my bow.
Because I'm still seeing Cunha sort of pick the ball up here, drive through players, win fouls. I'm still seeing Mbeumo maybe pull out wide and make these spins in behind, coming deeper in the midfield, as we mentioned before. So
and Ahmad's rotations in the amount that he's kind of being asked to either drop deep or even attack these areas more centrally.
Just one question I'll ask you just before we move on into United in the final third. One question I want to ask you is, do you think, we mentioned this when we talk about teams like Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, we're talking about them adding more and more players because they solve a lot more problems across different games, and they're different players for different game states. Amad Diallo playing right wing back and Mbeumo playing as the right 10. I mean, what have you kind of made of that? Because I think Amad's best actions this pre-season have come here. And I've always saw him as a right wing back under Amorim, but I think if we're trying to maximise the player quality, some of the movements I've seen from Amad in this space here has been freakish.
When he's dribbling directly.
And I don't want to displace the new £71 million signing.
And by the way, he was brilliant in his first half.
And that is true. And Mbeumo did only play 45 minutes. He's not up to speed physically, I doubt it. So I'm not saying drop him or anything like that. I'm just saying I don't know.
Well, to be honest, when you do mention that, I agree. There's certain zones where Mbeumo's better wide and Amad's better centrally. I think, and we've mentioned this, I think, in the Mbeumo preview video as well, when he receives the ball in these areas higher up, when your team's got a bit more established possession, I think he receives better in these areas. Absolutely. Now, the issue, I suppose, with both of these players is, can you get them to rotate enough in the situations where they need to rotate? Now, I think a non-negotiable for Amorim, and probably something that I would agree with, is if you are using your right wing back to do build-up, you don't want this to be Mbeumo.
No.
Amad has got that responsibility. He kind of can hold on to the ball longer, shimmy the ball, get into these areas, release a pass all the way here. And he kind of has the temperament to want to play in here and to be able to do it. I would never really want my sort of...
right 10.
Right 10.
Attacking winger.
To be so heavily involved in the build-up here. But I suppose it's fine. I think he's certainly better than Mbeumo in doing so. Which is fine.
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
I think typically you would see your right winger and your right back. So if we're just changing what they're called, in a 4-3-3, your right winger would be here and your right back would be here. And you've seen it with Saka and Ben White, for example, Salah and Trent. And then they play the pass, they're just a bit higher up. They play the pass here, and then that's where your pressure's on your back, and then they find plays here. But the first third typically is for your right back, centre back, and left back to solve with your central midfielders. Amorim does it differently, where he wants his wing backs to kind of solve that problem, and you don't have much presence here because you're trying to attack down the middle. So if that's the case, Amad has to be there. But I think if you get situations where perhaps you're a bit up the pitch and your centre backs and your sort of midfielders are playing here, then I would want Mbeumo to come out here,
Yeah.
and then Ahmad to be in that position where he can kind of drop in, attack the space here, and then there's that potential for rotation. But in the middle third, I agree that Mbeumo's better at receiving there than directly in here. But they're trying to facilitate for Mbeumo attacking these spaces, which is why I think for now it makes sense. Once you can establish more attacking possession, then you want to introduce Ahmad coming inside a bit more. And if this is a Dalot, maybe both of them can come inside and he can kind of overlap the situation as well.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions, but I think for now, he's probably profiling them to a decent standard.
Yeah. Okay, now moving on into the final section, which is Manchester United in the attacking third. And this is where we've seen more, probably less than we did last season in terms of them being pinned in the final third. So, yeah, what have you made of Manchester United straight off the rip in sort of this 3-2-5 shape against, likes of Bournemouth, West Ham, Everton?
I would say one thing that we've noticed, and we've mentioned it very briefly in this video already, is how these players are getting involved. Now, Luke Shaw is, in my opinion, at his best, a brilliant footballer, but I don't think he has the engine and the fitness to go up and down as that wing back. So this position is good because it gets him involved a little bit higher up. Euro's been doing it the best of all of the defenders because he's getting as far as the sort of right attacking half space areas, and he's genuinely getting involved, putting in crosses and being a player that teams can pass off of. You kind of want to get three players in this side because often there's only two opposition players here.
Yeah.
It might drag another player here, but then there's space somewhere else to recycle and switch the ball. So Euro, as that third man, has been really brilliant. On the left side, I know I mentioned Luke Shaw, but when Bruno was in the pivot, it was actually Bruno kind of becoming that third man. And then it was this 3-1-6 shape almost. But that 3-1-6 shape to overload a back five is something we've seen from a lot of coaches. Euro sometimes helps facilitate that when Bruno's inside. And then vice versa, Bruno goes outside and Euro facilitates that by seeing a little bit deeper. So we've seen that, and that's much better than what we saw last season in terms of these players being very static. Another thing that we've seen is, again, some of the rotations with your left 10s and your left wing backs. And I think Cunha is a brilliant player. I'm a big fan of him. I think he'll score loads of goals. For me, the most impressive player in the last couple of games in their short cameos has been Mason Mount. One of the reasons I would say that is because of how selfless he is in terms of his actions. Now, he links play, he knits things really well in terms of finding players next to him. But what he does really well is he's very consistent and very willing overlapping runs into these flank areas. Now, Cunha can definitely do that. In my opinion, he's somebody who, temperament-wise and sort of in his personality, wants to get more involved and play and score himself. I think Mason Mount likes to do that as well, but I've seen him do that a lot, and it's given Dorgu kind of these chances to move inside. Bruno as well, kind of linking with the three of them to play really nice on that side. And when Dorgu has come inside, I know Højlund, is kind of out of favour, but I think what I noted was every time Dorgu kind of got in a crossing position, Højlund was ready to attack this near post. So that might be situational. It might be like an instruction from Amorim to Højlund to attack that post and be ready for that cross from Dorgu and trying to facilitate those crossing situations. But it also might just be Højlund playing really kind of aggressively and trying to get into these spaces, which has also led him to score a goal against Bournemouth as well. So particularly this side and how those players have been playing has stood out to me, and these wide centre-backs as well. I think there's something that you noted or that you mentioned.
Yeah, there's one thing I noticed against Everton which was pretty interesting, which was if we just put this shape back into sort of the starting shape. One thing I noticed against Everton was actually we played a left side of Luke Shaw and Dalot, and I think one thing that happened when we got into the final third was that Dalot, obviously on the line, he's not left-footed, he can't really play that in-swinger, so I think he was moving more inside. Luke Shaw was pushing on, and then Ugarte was actually being the one to drop out. And again, you've got the 3-1-6, which we mentioned before, but kind of doing it in another way. I think Ugarte, especially against Everton, wasn't a player who we want receiving the ball here. We want to see him receiving the ball facing forward.
Time and space and under less pressure.
Time and space on the ball because you just can't be getting pickpocketed in this space, and we've seen it a few times against Everton. So I think having maybe like a Menu, who's more of a spatially aware player, I think he's a little bit better in terms of playing as the pivot. The problem is, with that 3-1-6, again, is what we've mentioned all the way throughout the pre-season for Manchester United, is who is good enough to play that, play the single pivot.
On the ball, I think Manu can absolutely do it. But then in rest defence, you've got Ugarte trying to get back here or jumping out, for example. A Manu who as brilliant as he is, and I think he's done well off the ball as well.
Yeah.
Can't cover all of these spaces.
He's just not a big space runner. I think, so if we kind of move it back into what we were saying, one of the things that I noticed straight away in the Bournemouth game was sort of the aggressive jumping out from the centre half. So if we've lost the ball and let's say he's pressed here, he's locked onto this player and this player runs forward. If this player's looking that way, Luke Shaw was on him like a rash, and I think Yoro and Luke Shaw and Aidan Heaven actually
been really good.
Have that sort of aggressive tenacity in terms of stepping up, and they're actually comfortable duellers. They're not players who are flimsy in the duellers. They're not players.
It's funny how they're fullbacks as well, though. It's almost you're playing one centre back at times.
Yeah, you're playing one.
Yoro, I know he's a centre back, but the way he plays, it feels like he's a fullback. He defends fullback out of possession as well. So,
I think one of the things I'd be concerned about with Manchester United, just in the attacking phase, is obviously we were speaking about Manchester United upping the tempo and playing a lot more crisper 1-2 passes, getting higher up. The pace in the team, not just on the ball but off the ball, is way better. But again, I'm looking at sort of viable chance creating methods against a set block. I don't doubt that Manchester United this season will be a lot more, as you mentioned in the build-up things, swinging the balls into players running behind, winning the knockdowns. I think at half-time against Everton, Amorim said in the half-time interview, was like, we need to be better in the second balls. We need to... They were a lot bigger of a team he was on about. But one of the things that you mentioned, which I'm a big fan of, is the centre-back pushing into the last line. That's a big one. I think having Mbeumo and Cunha either side of a number 9, whoever that is going to gradually get you more threat on the goal. But again, I think the problems in midfield in terms of the tempo the game's played at.
It's all midfield, isn't it?
It's just...
Because even the wingers, I think an Mbeumo and an Ahmad can create on this side. I think a Cunha can make things happen himself. A Mount and Doga can create on that side. But let's say you've kind of got everyone pinned here. You've got these kind of situationally dependent dropping in movements from these players. Which one of these 4 players can create from deep? Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes
I think that's why Bruno drops out so much, and I think that's probably why he's got to play a little bit deeper. But then again, you end up at the same question. He plays so quick. He needs a player next to him who can do all the running and do all the tackling, and we haven't got that yet. But yeah, I think one thing I will say is I think it looks a lot more comfortable for Manchester United to play the system, and I think they do look a lot sharper. But yeah, I think it's a gradual improvement. I don't think it's a massive improvement.
Yeah, it's not like he's changed.
No, he's not changed. But I think the structure-wise, I think the 4-4-2 out of possession looks way better. The block going into a 5-3-2 and then springing into a 4-4-2 press is better. I think that just the physicality, the tempo, the speed that the team's playing at is way, way better. But when you look at this team, for me, I'm just looking at, it looks like a team without a spine, and it's not. We've got no centre forward. We're missing that holding midfielder who's the anchor man of this team.
Probably the keeper.
The goalkeeper's not great. It looks like a team that's missing a spine, and unfortunately, it is.
Time's ticking.
Time's ticking. We'll see what Manchester United do in the market, and I'm sure we'll cover it on this channel, but we cannot stress enough how important that central midfielder role is for me. Someone whose temperament is good on the ball, someone who can run, someone who can duel. I wouldn't even be bothered about I wouldn't be too overly concerned about the dueling. If you can get someone who just understands how to control the game. Someone like that, then But what would you say?
I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to say, look, improvements, and I think more than improvements, at least clear things that we're seeing, clear, repeatable ideas. And I think it will take a few weeks at least to know whether or not they're successful or how good they are. We can kind of postulate about that, but we can see new things that are being implemented, and a lot of that's predicated on the player quality that they've brought in. So player quality above anything else, get some midfielders in, probably get a new goalkeeper in, and see how these ideas develop over the course of the season.
Right, let us know what you think about Manchester United and what you've made of their pre-season so far as we go into 25-26. But if you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel, and we'll be back next week for some more analysis. Thank you.